Welcome to Seminar Sunday, District 21's weekly episodic webinar series. My name is Michael. I'm the Program Quality Director with District 21, and it is an honor to be here with you this evening. Tonight we're discussing EasySpeak and how to utilize it as an administrator and some of the more complex abilities within the site. We will be covering off a wide range of items within the site, but we always have time for questions. Please take advantage of the attendee chat on the left-hand side of your screen if you're joining us by computer for the most rich experience, might I add. So if you are within reach of a computer, please do tune in. And we also have the question feature at the top of the screen. So if you've got a question, feel free to take advantage of that at the top of the screen. This is a weekly series. Next week, we'll be covering off core values, and then we will be taking a break until the new year. So next week will be the last of 2018. And then we're getting into focusing on Toastmasters month preparation, which is February, and also getting ready for our speech contest, which will happen mainly through March and April. Tonight's session will be covering off the administrative abilities within the site and how to customize your experience. We're going to dive a little bit more into the VP Education abilities, and we'll talk briefly as well on EasySpeak versus some of the other guys. During our basics session, we did cover off some things that the VP Education can do, as well as a little bit about other options that are out there. We'll reiterate some of those and perhaps expand on them as the opportunity allows. So we're not going to spend a lot of time in a PowerPoint or anything this evening. We're going to get right into the weeds of the actual site. Once again, I encourage you, please take advantage of that chat or the question asking feature. If you've got a question on anything that you see, if you want me to slow down, speed up, or show something that perhaps we didn't plan to explore, there's a lot of flexibility on these webinars. I do always have a plan coming onto them, but the plan is always full of room for some agile approach to things, because what really matters is that you're coming and you're getting something that you didn't originally have when you joined the call. So by all means, make sure that happens by asking questions, because none of us know what each other don't know. I'm going to bring up the EasySpeak page now, so we'll switch to a live demo here. Just a moment. And just waiting for, there we go, perfect. This is the home page once you log into the site. So when you get in, at first, you should see a landing page for your club. As an administrator, you will see other features on almost every page that allow you to take care of certain things. Now, the kicker here is, if you are the web, I still can't remember the title, but it's the, I think it's IT support is actually what maybe it is called, for the site, then you are able to do everything. You have the superpower to work on anything that they've allowed editing to be done on. So yeah, it's like the website administrator, exactly. And I'll show you how that's set up in a few minutes as well. But I do want to highlight that you'll see here, for example, edit text. So you can go in and start editing what this page says. So by clicking on the edit text, you'll see, and it's very user-friendly. You don't necessarily need to know programming or anything like that in order to go in and change things. It's got the toolbar where you're able to change the font size, bold, colors, everything you want to do, adding pictures. But beyond that, so when you first get to the page, You're also able to edit the layout. And that's just one key thing to notice on these web pages is that there's the layout, which is how, of course, everything's set up on the page. So you can add different sections. You can see how it kind of works, and editing certain parts of the page that are there or not there. So for example, down here, we've got a Facebook link. So I want to change it. Instead of social media, maybe it's just going to say Facebook, and it's going to have the background or those types of things. So I'm not going to get into exactly how to do all of this because, of course, that would take up the full time that we have allocated. But I just wanted to highlight the abilities that you have as you can go in and you can have this background or a box around it, or you can eliminate that completely. And the site will look a little different and have its own little personality. All right, so you'll see here, for example, the Facebook, there's no border, there's no background, there's no title to the section. It's just the Facebook logo. On the other side of the page, though, you'll see information about the club. It's got the border and the title to it. So that's kind of the difference when you start changing those settings. And you can have multiple pages set up as well. Like this one has home, directions, and contact us. But there's other pages which are currently not active. You can see our blog, meet our members. Very familiar for those that use FreeToast Host, the Meet Our Members page, those types of things. And you can also create additional pages. So the abilities are endless. You can just imagine all the possibilities when you're building out this site for your club. There is a whole suite of other options, though, and let's see here. Let's start with the Meetings tab. As administrator, when you go in to this tab, you'll see all the features that you see when you're a club member. But you will also see the ability to create a meeting. And what I particularly love is just how easy it is to create. This particular club has a meeting already scheduled up until January 7th. When you go to create a meeting, it automatically picks a week ahead of time. So it's never lost. It understands your club meets weekly, in this case anyways. I mean, I believe if your club met twice a month, it automatically does that as well. But it's just so neat that it takes care of that for you, so you don't have to continuously update when your meetings are. It understands that, and it sets it up as a new event. But unless you're changing something major, as soon as you do the new event, you hit submit, you're done. And you can add another event right away, and it will do the same thing. Then it will ask for, is this the date still? Submit, etc. Really fast and easy to set up meetings. What else is neat about this is you can select one of your agenda templates. So you can have a template for, we're going to do two speakers here. Immediately, it remembers what an agenda with two speakers looks like and allows you to go in and assign the roles. To assign the roles, there's really two different ways to do it. Number one, you simply go to Toastmaster and pick. This person hasn't been for 105 days, so therefore perhaps I'm going to assign them, or one of these two individuals that have never done Toastmaster in the system. Alternatively, there's an auto button below the all the roles. If you click on that, it will automatically populate all of the roles. So it's super easy for the VP Education, and that's one of the reasons I love this tool is, the VP Education role is one that is known as the most kind of tricky role in a club, because you're trying to keep up with all the scheduling and everything. Particularly if you have a club with 20 members, though. I mean, scheduling, you could schedule a whole month in 5 minutes here. Just a matter of setting up those meetings and hitting that auto assign. It's very easy, allows you to focus on perhaps things like the mentorship program or educational goals, or just thinking a little more strategically about, all right, so we have the 6 different educational goals we need to reach this program year in order to get, distinguished, President's Distinguished, whatever you're going for, and therefore here's how we're going to get there. So you're spending more time doing that rather than the actual active scheduling itself. The one exception that we're dealing with here is the speaker. Members either need to request a speech, in which case they'll show up here in the list, or you can request one on their behalf to the left. The auto scheduler will never automatically assign speakers. Every other role it will do, but not speakers. If you go into the edit agenda, this is where you can set new templates up as well. So you'll see here you can replace with a different template, but below you actually have create or replace a template. So if you go in and edit this, which is super easy to do, we go over it a little bit in the basic session. You change the speaking order, or you add a role, remove a role, whatever it happens to be. You can replace for example, the 2-speaker agenda, which is the one we selected, save over it. The old one's gone. That's your new agenda now. Alternatively, you can have 2 speakers plus extended table topics, whatever it happens to be. Describe it, and away you go. So that is really neat to be able to have those templates, and just with a click and drop of a button here, your agenda changes. You're also able to change what appears on the agenda. So at the start here, for example, the Toastmaster, we don't want that to show up on the print the start time for this item. No. And then if we pull up the agenda, there's now no start time for the Toastmaster. So there's a lot of cool little things that you can kind of turn on or off when it comes to this agenda. I'll leave it to you to explore this a little deeper, because there's just so much functionality here that I don't think we'd be able to cover this off, even if we had 12 hours, quite frankly. You can add users, so if a new member joins the club, you can add them right from this screen, which is very convenient. I will show you how to do it another way as well in just a few moments, but basically, let's say you got a new member and they're joining January 1st. You can pick who introduced them to the club if you want to keep track of that. And then you put in, this is a little confusing, I will admit. You can put in their username. So if they're a member who's already using EasySpeak, you can just add them by username. You can select from a list, or you can input their name. So let's say their name is, I don't know, let's go with somebody that I've heard of once or twice, Sean Gold. And it's going to be Sean at D21 Toastmaster. If I could spell, that'd be good. Or heard of the guy anyways. Submit. And it's actually quite a smart tool. It needs you then to put in a username for the person. You can put in their phone number if you want to, create a new user, and the person's added. Simple as that if it's a new member. One thing I do want to highlight is the system now requires an email address. Before it didn't. So just make sure you've got an accurate email address to use for the person. It does, I believe, send a notification as soon as you set them up with that email address. So that's a bit challenging when you're trying to set up the site at first, because of course you want to get your users in there and kind of figure out how everything works. But it does need to be a valid email address. So that's, I think, for the moment, all we'll talk about with this particular section of the site, just because I want to make sure we get through all the different sections that are applicable. These areas here are more or less for you as a user to see how you're proceeding with different goals. There's a forum, and there's also a mass email ability. So if you just want to send out an email to all members or just the officers, you can do that, and it just toggles on and off who you send it to, who it's going from, and whatever you want it to say. So easy as that, and that is only available to officers that have that permission set up in their profile, or in this case, your IT support person, your administrator. Speaking of that, let's go into club officers here, and you will see, because I'm an administrator, I can go in and pick people that have different roles. Anna, thanks for the question about the email there, sending attachments. I don't believe you can send an attachment. Let's go back just to make sure. No, you can't send an attachment. What you can do is you can put an attachment in the discussion forum. So, for example, if you want to have scripts for different roles or just information about, club policies or whatever, you can attach them there. That is one of the downsides of the email system, is it doesn't do the attachment thing. I suspect that's just a kind of a security thing, because somebody can get in there and send viruses or something. So the officer list here, it has drop down, just like it's what the site likes to do. It likes to have drop downs for various things. And as an administrator, that's the only time you really see this. You wouldn't see this as a member, and members can just go in and pick a new president. The abilities within each role are set up in the control panel, which we'll go into in just a few minutes. And you're able to, for example, you can have the secretary has ability to edit this. You could have all officers can, or you could have no officers can, and it's just the IT support. As you can see, I'm listed here as IT support, and if I pick somebody else, they would get the same abilities. And it's quite a cool little drag and drop, and the features flip on or off in seconds. So very convenient. And as you head on through the year, when you get closer to the election cycle, you'll be able to put in the next year's officers as well. And that way, July 1st, there's an automatic transition. So when we go to the user list, and just reminder, sorry, if you have questions, type them in anytime. I'm happy to go back if I'm going too fast or anything. I just want to make sure we get as much value out of our time together as we can. You'll have that add user button again on this screen. So just as a heads up, that's there, and on the agenda area as well. Exactly the same abilities. And you can go in and edit people. So for example, if somebody tells you their email address changes or something along those lines, you can go in and let's see what we can do with Michael Bound. You can put in a membership number if you want, phone numbers, those types of things. The clubs, what clubs you may, the club that you're involved with, if you want to make this person a past member. There is no way, from what I've been able to find, to actually delete a member. So you would have to, every member that leaves your club, you put them as a past member. But you could also upgrade somebody here from a visitor, for example, to a member. Who the mentor is for that person. Those kind of things are put in here. And then there's also different involvement with a club. So if you've been to any clubs, you may see yourself there. And if you're a member of any clubs, then you'll see yourself there as well. So that is that. I really find that very convenient. You can also send a reset password to members. Didn't show you that at the start. So if somebody says they forgot their password, that's where you send the reset to them. I don't know that there's much else in this area that would mean a lot as an administrator, but we can always come back. Where I want to go next is this little thing at the bottom, and it is so easy to miss. It's a club control panel. And this is where you can flip on and off abilities and the whole feel of the site. As a techie geek, this is where I like to play. This is my sandbox. So there's only so many abilities, of course, but you just need to re-enter your password when you go here, just because it really is a very powerful area. So when you log in at first, you've got just information about the site, really. I mean, we can see that there's 1,714 clubs currently using this site. And those are around the world, as I think I mentioned earlier. Actually, here in District 21, we don't have that high of an uptake. I don't remember how many clubs we have. I would suggest it's 20-something, maybe 30-ish that we have using it. But I remember looking at some of the other districts around the world before, and I was so impressed that there was places like Hong Kong, for example. They had so many clubs that were using it. I just couldn't believe it. It seemed like every club, maybe it was every second club. So it is indeed a worldwide platform. I believe the admin index isn't very interesting either. If I can try to remember where that even was. When you're first setting up your site, you'll use these two features under import. You can import your members. So what it will do is actually tell you how to set it up. So it's going to be in a CSV, and you just download the roster from your Toastmasters International site. And that way it just uploads and away you go. It's fast and easy that way to get your members in. And you can do exactly the same with speeches. It's a very similar process, so I'm not going to click through it because there's not much to see other than, there's a spot to upload a spreadsheet, and it will tell you what format it needs to be in and everything in order to proceed. And then, you obviously you pick whether they're members or what they are. And that's kind of that. So I don't know that we need to get any more into that, but if anybody has any questions on the import process, I'd be happy to talk about it. Below that is kind of where, most of the topics are relatively self-explanatory. Let's just go into them one by one, though. So this is really what it's all about. This is quite neat here. You've got your officer positions, and then the order that they're listed on, and that's in the club officer listing on the main site there. So president, of course, shows at the top of the list, which makes sense. These are mostly default. I believe the president-elect and the assistant vice president education were added in. Everything else, I believe, was kind of stock as it came. And the reasons those were added in is just so they get the extra abilities on the site if they need it. And you'll see here as well, moves to, and that's automatic then. On July 1st, the president will move into the immediate past president You don't need to set up who's going to be your immediate past president. It just rolls them into that role automatically. You can remove any of these positions if you want to, add. And when you click on add, it will give you a very similar screen to this when you click on edit, where you just, this is where we get into those permissions I was talking about. So you've got the president, what abilities they have. So their title, of course, is the first thing. You're probably not going to use that very much. You're going to leave them for the most part as is, but if you're creating a new one, you'll have to put all that in. Displaying in the list of club officers. So if a member goes into the list of club officers, for example, they will not see the IT support names, because the IT support names don't really matter. I mean, you would probably first, if you were having troubles, contact one of the club officers, like, you know, the VP Education, to say, hey, you know, I'm not able to sign up for this role. Why? And then the officers would usually go to IT support if needed. And then there's the permissions. So from here, this is where it's a yes or no. Either they have that ability or not. And that's why I was saying changing the club officers is, I believe, one of the options. Here we are. Change officers for the current / next year. That's a yes or no. So if your club decides, for example, only the secretary has that ability, you can set it up that way. And then no matter who else goes in, they won't be able to click on those drop downs. It will only be the one officer. Opposite, though, is also true. You could open it up so anybody could do it that's an officer. Your average, just a regular member would not be able to do that unless you set up every member as some sort of officer, because you could create an officer role for every member if you wanted to, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having these controls whatsoever. The control panel, that's this area. I have no idea why, for some reason, the club president wouldn't have access to this, but anyways. And then editing things about the meeting, so that gets primarily into your VP Education abilities. There's just all kinds of little things. Send email to all club members. So that's that club mass email set thing we looked at a little earlier. If that's a no, they're not even going to see that. It's going to be invisible to them. So I'm not going to go through every single one. I mean, everybody, I'm sure, that's joining on the computer can see what it looks like, and you know, it doesn't really matter. I mean, at the end of the day, you can see that there's different abilities for the officers, and you can modify them as your club sees fit. So if your club is really one that wants to give everybody access, they can, or you can have just the access you need for your role, and that just transitions with the role. So that's kind of neat that if somebody's president today and you know, July 1st rolls around, the new president gets the exact same access the last president had, unless, of course, that's changed somewhere in here. So that's the officer setup, and I'll save that so the president gets access to the section there. The club setup is really the same, but for the club instead of the officers. You'll see the club name, the details about it, and then be able to go in and edit. You'll see the tabs at the top. This is where you can change your club name, the administrative email, the web address. So as you can see, this is victoriadiversity.easy-speak.org. You could put in another name if your club changed names, or for whatever reason decided to go with a different address. You There's a lot of blank boxes here too, you can see, but you can add in different social media accounts. If you've got your own club logo, that can be uploaded and then it can go on the agenda, as you see. If you were into analytics, you could do that for your club. We get into some of the displays, so time zone, of course, the date formats, different privacy preferences. So there's a lot of different things that you can kind of set up for the club. You can do kilometers or miles for distances. You can have a membership survey. I've never used these features myself, but I mean, it is an option. It's totally customizable what things you have within your site in those senses. And then this is kind of an important area here, role allocation. And what role allocation is that ability for that auto assigning to smart assign. So it's going to, by kind of default, not looking at this section whatsoever, what essentially it's doing is looking at who has had the role as far back as the system can find, and then putting them in those roles and kind of allocating in order of priority. So Toastmaster, for example, would be top priority to assign. But if you're a new member, then it wants to hold back and wait for at least 2 meetings before you get any role in this case. And you can change that. So you could have a new member take on a role their next meeting, or you go as far as 10 meetings before they get a role. So that's really nice. Major role as well, which would be like a Toastmaster, general evaluator, those types of roles. Repeating, how long it should be before they repeat. So all of that is here, and that is a really nice thing to be able to control, because then it makes it even that much more intelligent in terms of how it assigns. How quickly the meeting is visible. So that's another thing that I know, Anna, I think you had a question about that. If your VP Education sets up a bunch of meetings, they can still have it invisible beyond a certain amount of time. I don't know if there's much point to that, but there is some clubs that will do that. Volunteering online, where it will allow you could have people go in and volunteer themselves for a particular role in the meeting. That's completely fine. And then usually there's also a restriction on them volunteering for more than one role. So, and I mean, unless the club is really low on members, people shouldn't be doubling up on roles unless there's a certain criteria met here where it's saying, all right, well, within 3 days, if there's still roles available, people can double up on roles. And then finally, here's that feature to prevent people from making changes. So instead of you going in and signing up for a role or changing something, 6 hours ahead, it's going to stop that. And that's to basically for the agenda printing. Like, if you have no limit on changes, then the agenda can never really be printed. So that's that. I mean, I'm not going to cover off every point and go into this section necessarily, but gives you an idea what kind of abilities are there. Your meetings, so you can have a default location, how often you meet. There's all, how the agendas look. So one of those features I think I mentioned was showing recent DCP success on the agenda. You could turn that off if you didn't want to, but it's really nice to remind your club, hey, you know what? We were Presidents Distinguished last year, and that's the new standard for our club. We expect to be Presidents Distinguished every year. Boom, it's on the agenda every week to remind people. So that's one thing I love, is that it's got that built in. I didn't tell the club that the club I didn't tell the system that the club was Presidents Distinguished. It knew that, so it's connected somehow to the systems with Toastmasters International. If you want to have meeting numbers on the agenda, this is where you'd set it up. If you want to have your theme, word of the day, all those things, whatever you want to show on the agenda is here. So it is really quite handy. You've got this box too where you can put in whatever you want. This club's decided to put in the club mission. And this is where it allows the Toastmaster to be the meeting manager and assign roles and such. You could turn that off. So then the Vice President of Education would have to manage everything. The Toastmaster wouldn't be able to even add somebody in as a role or anything if that's not turned on. So that's a big ticket item there to consider carefully, is the permissions. What can the meeting manager do and what can't they do? And go from there. So something you'd want to quickly check. Toastmasters International info is just confirming your district, division, area assignment. So I won't even bother going into that tab, as that's super straightforward. Locations edit is where you'd be able to actually go in and mark down different meeting places that you have. So you wouldn't be able to select a meeting location unless it was added here first. So you could do new. What's the name? Put in your directions. Have the Google Maps show where it is, etc. And then just save. I'm not going to create one now. It's self-explanatory. I just want to show what it looked like. Meeting awards would be some clubs have that best speaker, best evaluator. That's where you'd go and add those if you had different awards that you give your members. Meeting roles. This is, of course, all the different meeting roles that are possible. You'll see some of them are contest only, which is kind of neat actually, because the system has a way, for example, with a judge, of not displaying on the agenda who the judges are, but you can still have the judges tracked in Easy Speak. So that's relatively interesting, that the judges are still anonymous and invisible in every way, shape, and form, but they're actually listed in Easy Speak. Personally, with my club, I didn't bother listing them though, because it's like, well, what's the point if you're not going to appear anywhere? But if you're just trying to keep track of them, you, as VP Education, for example, you could do that. Let's just go in and edit. And once again, no matter where you go on the site, the experience is very similar. Whether you go to add, edit, X to remove, they're all pretty straightforward and the same experience. So edit, you've got the role name, what it is, etc. And then you get into some of the details about whether the role can be assigned to somebody, whether it should be on the participation chart and the agenda, and can a member volunteer? Can there be multiple of these? Is it for a competition? And here's that feature, right? So yes, it's a competition role, and it can be hidden from public view. And that's, judge is really the only one that strikes me. And here's that ability for speaker. So it's a yes, no, or educational. And that means that somebody has to request it as soon as it's that feature. So the workaround, and I was mentioning this on the last webinar, is you could create something called, prepared speaker or something. And down here, you could claim that it's not a speaker. And then the auto assign could kick in, etc. You wouldn't, but then there'd be no ability to put in a speech title, and it wouldn't track members' progresses in the educational program. So to be used with caution, but it is a possible workaround. And then these questions are all related to the role allocation, the automatic role allocation. Is it a major role? So that goes back to the setting we were looking at just a few minutes ago, where it was referencing major role is going to be 6 meetings before a member takes it on. So 2 meetings before they'll take on any role, 6 meetings before they're going to be, a Toastmaster, for example. And that's where this is identified. But it can also, instead of just restricting it to the major role, you can also say, wait a second, I want somebody to come for more meetings than that. And you can set that then to be a certain number before somebody's automatically assigned to the Toastmaster role. And I like this as well. You can have it, if possible, do not assign the role to members who have attended more than so many meetings. So I don't know why you'd really want to use that. I mean, I know some experienced members are like, well, I don't want to be timer anymore. I've done that 10,000 times. I guess you could theoretically turn that off here if you wanted to. So somebody that's come for, 10 meetings doesn't need to be timer anymore. But I would avoid that just because, we, as members, I mean, I tend to think everybody should do all roles, and you should never say a role's below you or something. And that's kind of what it's like when you're trying to say somebody shouldn't do timer. I did timer last week, actually. Member survey, I'm not even going to get into that. That's a tool that can be utilized if your club really wanted to deploy it. I've never used it, never bothered with it. But you could do a kind of a membership survey through the system. But I will touch on this really quickly, this membership status. Sean signed up for timer tomorrow night. Why didn't you do it last week? That's when I was timer. Good on you, Sean. This is the different types of members. So I mentioned before that you cannot delete a member. I guess because people have set up, in some cases, their own user ID and everything, and they're attached to your club, but they could be attached to other clubs as well. And for whatever reason, unless somebody detaches themselves, then I believe they're always with you. So there's kind of a bucket of past members that you can have in there, but you can also create other buckets if you wanted to, or you go in and just say, all right, so this is the, for a member, this is probably a bad experience to show you, but because it's all yeses, but, are they a full member? Well, you could have, for example, a bucket for members not in good standing. And you could say, well, not really. They're not a full member of the club right now. And then it kind of gets into, can they take roles? Will they get emails? Etc. So just something to reflect on is how you would use this for your club. Most of the times, I think these are all just defaults. That usually covers off any type of member that you'd want. But if there's a certain bucket that you want to create, you can do that here. Anna has asked a question about the survey. So the survey questions, I think you can actually add questions if I remember correctly. I'm not going to lie, it's been a while. Now what's going on here? Technology. There we go. Okay. So this is what the survey looks like. I'm not going to go through it all, but it's more or less just getting to know what people want. It's almost like the that survey. What do you call it? Member interest survey, I think. So you just go through why you joined and what you're interested in doing, those types of things. More, and you can add questions, you can hide questions, etc. More or less to find out why people join, whether they plan to remain with the club, etc. I personally, and this is why I didn't really highlight this section. I just find there's more value in doing that either in person or by email, and you can customize kind of for what the situation is. Like I'd ask a new member, what are you looking for out of our club, and how can we help you achieve those goals? Whereas with an experienced member, I may say, okay, where do you want to go next? And, those types of questions. I don't know if I'd ever necessarily, do you plan to continue in our club next term? I'd probably word it a little differently. Probably say something like, hey, what do you want to do in our club next? And make it a little more positive. But absolutely, the ability is there if you choose to use it. So I know we've gone through a number of things here. This admin index, of course, is a powerful tool. There's lots of other things that we can do on the site that I find extremely helpful. I really like EasySpeak for its its power. Really is, I guess, how I could explain it best, because I've mentioned before that it's my favorite site for scheduling meetings. And that's, just for those reasons, as we've kind of went over in this call. I mean, you can see that you can customize almost everything. It's got email templates that can be sent out. You can add and remove roles or abilities for anybody. So it's really very much 100% customizable. And because I'm pretty comfortable with technology, the fact that there is so many switches and abilities, turn this on or off, doesn't bother me. But I can see, if you do have a club or individuals in your club who are not as tech savvy, some of this administration can be a little much for them. But comparing with other platforms like Free Toast Host is very much a site for a web page, and they've added in the ability to do the scheduling and everything. To my knowledge, there's still no ability to do an auto assign, and it's not quite as customizable. What that means is perhaps a little more user friendly for those that are not as tech friendly, but it does mean just a little bit less power for editing different things. So it's kind of what you want. It's that balance between the two. You could use both if you want something for your web page, something for your scheduling. There's other tools out there, like TurboBase is another one that some clubs are using. It's simple. You can do your scheduling on it, and I think it has some sort of email capabilities. The person who developed that has not kept it up to date per se, but of course there's not a lot to keep up to date. It's very basic in nature. It's I guess what I'm trying to say is that they don't make updates to it and kind of make it get better and better as time goes on. They've kind of just built a tool, and here you go, use it and enjoy it, and it does a good job at what it was built for. These two sites, though, are kind of known more as the leaders, EasySpeak and Free Toast Host, and they're always looking at ways to improve. EasySpeak did some relatively major changes. I don't know, it was a year or two ago. Free Toast Host, I think, was even more recent when they put out the what is it called? 3.0, I think. So there is definitely pros and cons to all the options that you can utilize, no matter what you're looking for. And hopefully through this session, you've been able to kind of steer yourself to, well, that's a little, maybe too much for our club, or that's just what we need, or, whatever serves your club's desires. That's the one thing that I would just be careful about, is making sure that it's not, just this is what I like, but also this will work for my club. The hardest part about EasySpeak is getting it set up. As you've seen, you go through all those kind of control panel areas and just make sure all the settings are set up in a way that the club would prefer things to run. But then once that's done, it's kind of a set it and forget it until something comes up and you're like, oh, that it shouldn't be doing that. And then it's just a matter of going in and finding it and flipping that switch. So that's really it. It's as simple as getting it set up, which is the most time-consuming part, and then you kind of forget about all those control panel areas because it's very rare you'd have to go in. Free Toast Host is just a little bit more kind of, I would suggest, just a little bit more user-friendly in terms of the setup. But neither is going to be a walk in the park per se if you've got people that are more low-tech friendly. Anna, I would suggest you don't need experts to set up the site. I think, you know, I'll just log out really quick here actually just to show you. I mean, from the homepage of EasySpeak, it's as simple as going in, putting in your club number, logging in or registering as a user yourself. They set up the site for you, and it's just basic bare bones. But if you go through what we've covered tonight, you go through that control panel and basically, you know, you decide which switches should be yes and which should be no. Setting up the agenda in a format that works for your club, so replicating basically what you're doing now. Adding the users and the speeches in, that could be an import, as you saw on the control panel, and that's really it. So I don't think you need experts. You could try it yourself for sure. If you get lost or anything, you can always contact me. I'm happy to help anytime. And if I'm not sure of something or whatever the case may be, I may refer you to, we have a volunteer EasySpeak chair for the district. Her name is April Kennedy. She's a distinguished Toastmaster. I've got a lot of experience. And so between myself and her and anybody else, please feel free to reach out, because I really don't think you need any real experts. If you're going to get stuck, it'll just be, you know, in a spot here or there. It's not going to be just a catastrophic meltdown or something like that. It'll just be kind of, well, where do I find this again? Can you remind me, or something like that? That is what I have for the live demo. So I'm going to switch back to the slides here really quick. But I'd love to hear any other questions that anybody has. Does anybody have any other questions about abilities or pros or cons, those type of things? Got just a couple more minutes left. Okay, well, I'll just continue on, and if anybody's typing a question, don't hesitate to just still submit it or anything. We're not past that point. We're never past that point until we formally end this demonstration. So my contact details on the screen. It's mbound_d21@gmail.com. That's mbown_d21@gmail.com. Flip me an email anytime if you've got questions about EasySpeak, Free Toast Host, any of the options out there, and you want to know more, or you're stuck somewhere. Like I said, if I don't know the answer, I will find it for you somehow, and that will likely be going through April Kennedy. And if there's other topics that you think you really need to know more about or something, let me know as well, and we'll work on it. That's one thing that is important as Toastmasters. We're all in this together. We're all learning and growing, and I'm happy to be somebody that's a resource anytime you need something. I think that's part of the one of our core values, which we'll be talking about next week. Service to others and to each other, and using a tool like EasySpeak is it's a good service to yourself in a way as well. If you are Vice President Education in particular, because you can take whatever you're doing today for scheduling and turn it into something that takes 2 minutes. You know, it's super fast. Create an event, submit, pick your template, auto assign, and then you're on to your next task. So if nobody has any questions, I would like to thank you so much for joining this seminar, and I hope you found value in it. Look forward to connecting with you in the future, and please don't forget to tune in for our final Seminar Sunday of the year, next Sunday, 7 p.m. Pacific, and that will be on the Toastmasters core values of integrity, respect, service, and excellence. Have a good night.